They're the beasts of off-road racing, and we've got our own under construction. Today on Xtreme 4x4, close-up how-to on all the goodies of our Pro II race truck. Plus, East meets West in a one-off shootout for rock crawling's national championship.
Welcome to Xtreme 4x4, where as you can see, we have a whole pile of work to do on our CORR Pro II race truck.
Everything from body panels to mounts, some headers, plumbing, wiring, and everything that we do today is a key ingredient to turning this pile of tubing into a hardcore race truck.
Now, whatever project you have sitting in your garage, hopefully you can take some of our ideas to help you get your project off the jack stands and out into the field. And wait until you see this sick gauge package that we came up with.
Now the first thing we're going to take care of today is going to be the fiberglass body. Now for this truck, we chose a Ford F-150 full fiberglass body package, mainly because the motor that we put together for this thing is based on a Ford small block. But before we can add any more panels to this truck, we need to build some additional tube structure in order to support them.
This complete fiberglass body comes from Boatec Industries, who's been making fiberglass bodies for off-road race vehicles for years. And now they've come up with a new molding process that'll make a difference out on the track. Now, normal hand-laid fiberglass panels are very rough on the inside, but Boatec's new injection molding process makes it just as smooth on the inside as it is on the outside.
Now, making the inside of the fiberglass panel smooth actually makes a big difference on a race truck. The hand-laid panel that's rough actually can cake up with mud and dirt when you go through the water and actually splash up off the tire and wheel. Now, this will actually add weight to your race truck, which is what you don't want. The smooth panel is more than likely going to shed all that extra weight, therefore the truck is faster. Now, obviously, I know that most of you guys aren't planning to spend the rest of this weekend hanging a CORR body on your tube chassis race truck. But a lot of the tips that we're going to show you here apply to pretty much any fiberglass panel, whether it's going on your rock buggy or whether it's just a gutted out steel panel that you're going to put on your tough truck. We'll start by adding some additional tubing to support all the body panels. For the bed sides, some bracing out.
Right there?
Yep. Sidebars and a new rear bumper will be added to the chassis. Then tabs are added and the panels can be bolted in place.
On the front, a nose assembly will not only help mount the hood, grille, and fender, but will also become a bumper. The door skins mount to Nerf tubes on the bottom, and a small 1-inch tube with mounting plate will support the rear. Then the roof panel will be mounted to the two door skins.
So is this thing finally looking like a race truck or what? Now, CORR racing is not really considered a form of endurance racing, but to say that your body could take a beating inside one of those race trucks is an understatement. Catching huge air, wild corners, and the occasional racing rub can leave your body feeling pretty banged up without the benefits of a good suspension seat.
We're going to be installing a MasterCraft 3G suspension seat. And to understand what makes a suspension seat so great is to take a look inside. Now, it all starts with this 3/4-inch mandrel bent tube frame that's wrapped with a nylon-coated mesh, which is very porous to allow moisture to flow through. Now, that mesh is then double-lapped and laced with nylon parachute cord. Now, once the polyurethane foam is glued and shaped, the entire seat is wrapped with your choice of custom colors. We opted for the new Dirt Sport cover with blue and black fabric and carbon fiber inserts. Installing the seat is very easy. The chassis from North American Off-Road already had the mounts welded in.
Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys remember this Ford 434 cubic inch small block we built to power our CORR Pro II truck. Now, the rest of our drivetrain is just as unique. It starts with a Coan racing torque converter that has a stall speed between 3,700 and 4,500 RPM. Now, it will deliver the engine power into this, a 2-speed Powerglide transmission built by Hughes Performance, specifically set up to handle the rigors of CORR racing. Now behind this, we're going to be installing a gear vendor's overdrive unit. And it all gets controlled with a winner shifter with a button on top to activate the overdrive feature. Now I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering, why would you install a 2-speed Powerglide and an overdrive unit instead of just a simple 3-speed automatic? Well, the difference is, by using the first gear and then a slightly larger overdrive, we're going to be allowed to keep the engine in its peak RPM power band. As an example, if we were to go from first to second with this transmission, the engine might go from, say, 6,500 RPM down to 4,500. By just slipping it into overdrive, we'll go from 65 to 55, keeping peak power to the wheels at all times. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering, how are we going to bolt a Ford motor up to a GM transmission? Well, it's done using this motor plate setup that we got from Summit Racing. It's a 1/2-inch thick aluminum piece that's specifically designed for this application. It's drilled for the Ford small block and also drilled and tapped to accept studs to mount the GM transmission. Now the kit comes with a crank adapter as well as an SFI Spec Plate that allow the whole package to bolt into the truck and work great.
Up next, Houston, Texas and the We Rock Nationals. It's the young guns versus the veterans in this do or die finals when Xtreme 4x4 continues.
Xtreme 4x4 tradition, we continue to showcase America's top off-road trails and events.
This week, it doesn't get any bigger than the Grand Nationals. We Rock season ender, where the young guns get a chance to show up the seasoned veterans. Over the brief history of professional rock crawling, Jason Pauley, Shannon Campbell, and Tracy Jordan have dominated.
We've been doing this for 7-8 years and pretty proud of our record.
They're what you call, pioneers of the sport.
Racking up hundreds of wins and a room full of championship trophies.
That's where I want to get to in this sport.
Those guys are the best.
They are the sport's first superstars who inspired a whole new generation of competitors.
Those are the guys I saw in the magazines and saw on TV and, the people I really looked up to.
Now the kids with those magazines are out here, kicking some butt.
The younger generation is pushing the envelope of the sport.
And the royalty of the Rocks have taken notice.
All these young guys coming up make me feel old.
These guys are good. I mean, they're no dummies.
Leading this new crop is 2005 national champ Jesse Haynes.
It's stressful. Sometimes I almost wish I wasn't doing as well, so it could just be fun.
And Matt Dees, who bulldozed over his East Coast competition to win his 3rd title.
That was great, man. I tell you, that's a good feeling. It's something that you strive for all year long, and then you get it.
Just outside of Houston, Texas, both generations came to the one-off We Rock Grand Nationals.
It's a big deal. Yeah, this is huge. I mean, the best guys in the country are here.
Every driver had a strategy. Matt Dees planned to keep it simple.
Point and shoot is my style.
Joining the pro circuit in 2003, his style was far from perfected.
In 2003, man, I tell you, after several breaks and rollovers, I'd had enough. I was ready to throw in the towel.
Matt Dees is no quitter.
This sport is definitely full of adversity, and if you don't keep striving and pushing to be the best, then you never will be.
3 titles later, he's considered a young gun.
I stuck with it, and it's really paid off. To get up there and fight your way to the top and turn around and go, yeah, I did that.
At the national championships, he was ready to take on his idols.
If you can go home and say, man, I beat Tracy Jordan or Shannon Campbell, that's huge, it's definitely a great feeling.
Definitely top-notch driver. He's really tough. He'll be tough to deal with out here.
It's cool to be respected that way. It's a good feeling. I've been on the other end of the spectrum where, who's that guy?
To qualify for the 6-driver, 1-obstacle shootout, one mistake was one too many.
1 point, it's a big deal.
Campbell qualified first, followed by Haynes and Dees.
Them boys are good.
Well, a lot of these new guys are definitely crazy. They'll definitely put it on the line.
In a shocker, Tracy Jordan missed the cut and had to watch from the sidelines.
I'm just mad right now. I'm just really mad. Really mad.
With Pauley qualifying 5th, the shootout became a generational showdown of biblical proportions.
4 years ago, it would have been a dream going against these guys head-to-head in a shootout.
Carrying over their qualifying scores, Paulie put it on his lid and finished in 5th place.
With his 3rd place finish, Dees solidified his rising star status.
We got out here and we earned it, and we did real well. So it's just it's honor to feel, you know, that we finished in the top 3.
When Haynes could only pull within 24 points of Campbell, it looked like this event was going to the veteran.
We're gonna just get up there and take our time and try to clean it. There's a lot of pressure. Hopefully we can pull this off.
Driving more like a rookie, he gave the lead over to Haynes as the clock ticked down.
Well, he's ahead of you by 1 point right now.
With only 57 seconds remaining, he needed one bonus line to win the title. He nailed it.
Feels good. I can't believe it got down to that close. That's not good.
The young guns came up short. This time,
Next year, I guess.
We give it everything we had. It's a great feeling to know that I am competitive and I can beat these guys. I tell you, man, it definitely leaves you here with a good feeling.
well, they finished nowhere near the top of the stock mod class, but we give a thumbs up to our good friends Troy Slaughter and Rob Stapleton.
They drive the buggy that's sponsored by Flowmaster and Echo Racing. And on the second to last obstacle, they had some problems in their front diff. The axle was okay, but they ended up trashing a spider gear. That left them with only one-wheel drive heading into a course. But instead of throwing in the towel, they put on one heck of a show for the spectator.
Yeah, it's more like a demonstration on how to wreck your rig.
But I think that's what everyone was there to watch anyway, based on the number of people taking pictures. And in the end, it was all worth it.
The crowd loved it, and we loved it too.
There's even a fire.
Good job, guys. Good job. Totally. Welcome back to Xtreme 4x4. You know, there's a lot of race engineered parts inside of that 434 stroker motor for the CORR race truck. And we'll dish out all the goodies on that in a little bit. But right now, it's time to bolt in the drivetrain.
Wiggle, wiggle. Now the heads on our stroker motor are Dart Pro 1 CNCs, and the exhaust port measures 1.42 inches by 1.42 inches. So to make room for that monster port, Dart actually moves the header bolts further out than the stock design. Now because of that, finding a flange to fit can be difficult, but we were able to get one from Hedman Hustler.
You may have guessed by now that there's no such thing as a pre-bent header for a Pro II race truck, which means that we're going to need to build our own custom headers, which in turn means that we're going to need some pre-bent tubing, 1 3/4 in our case, and some collectors. Now building your own headers isn't really all that difficult, plus you can use it on any project that you're doing, whether you're doing just a simple engine swap or you're building your own custom tube buggy. It's best to start at the end and work your way up to the engine. For this truck, we're using a Flowmaster Race Series muffler fed by a Y-pipe. The Y-pipe will help with low RPM scavenging, helping build torque, and we'll use Dynatech V-band clamps to make the system removable. Then all that's left is to connect each cylinder to the collector. Now patience is definitely a virtue here. Take your time and everything will go really smooth. And if not, start over.
Now the number one rule when building a set of custom headers is to try to keep your primary tubes all the same length. That's why a header often looks like a big pretzel. The outlet that's as close to the collector as possible usually runs away from it and then swoops back in, while the further away outlets will usually have a fairly straight shot into the collector and out. By keeping those tubes the same length, it means the engine will work more efficiently and therefore more power.
Another tip is to make sure that you're not compromising your bends, which means that if you need an angle in your tubing is to not cut the angle in the tubing like this. See how that bend just isn't quite right? What you're going to want to do is get either a larger or a smaller radius and start at a lower point in the tubing. Now to keep all those bends right, it's a really good idea to use these alignment rings in the tubing to keep everything together. Like so.
Now to weld up the joints on the headers, I'm using a silicon bronze filler weld. Now this has a lower melting point than the steel that the header tubes are made out of. Therefore, we can take the heat out of the tube, not worry about burn back on the edge piece, and yet still have a filled in joint.
So far, the CORR Pro II truck is getting closer to being out on the track. But before we can even get the engine started, we have to install all of this stuff. Now, just like the headers, there's no such thing as an accessory bracket for things like the alternator and the dash and the orbital valve and the oil pump and the pedals and the shifters. You know what I'm talking about. The only real issue when it comes to installing parts like these into a race truck is that everything has to fit perfectly. Why, you ask? Obviously, every inch of a CORR chassis must be able to withstand the punishment of a race on a track that can be unforgiving. Now, great care went into our custom North American off-road chassis, so we're not cutting any corners on the rest of this build. Simple tabs and tubes will not do. Dimple-dyed plates are the norm on these types of trucks, so it will need a lot of them.
And with everything finally being mounted to the chassis for good, we can start to work on the wiring harness for this truck. Now to control it, we're going to be using a Painless Performance Universal Off-Road 4-switch switch box with waterproof circuit breakers. Now that will control a bank of 6 relays that'll control everything from our Mazir water pump, our Edelbrock fuel pump, basically the ignition, as well as the fans for the transmission, as well as the radiators. And then of course, the best button on this box will be the one to start it. That's how it's going to sound. You know it.
Now the gauges for this truck are pretty special. This is the RacePak Ultra Dash 250DS. This is a fully digital display that will allow the driver to read the engine's vital signs all in one spot. Everything from the RPM to the water temperature to the oil pressure and up to 32 other channels of data. And you can go ahead and record 10 minutes of data so you can go ahead and test and tune when you're out on the track.
The next step is to take care of all this vehicle's plumbing. Now for the fuel system, we're using Russell's new Carburator Install Kit. That includes everything we need, from the filter to the pump, regulator, lines and fittings. Now for the dry sump oil system, it's all Russell Dash 12 line and stainless fittings.
Well, that's all we have for you guys today, and the next time you see this truck, it should be running around the shop under its own power.
Oh yeah! It's good news.